It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
So here we are about 8 or 9 months into the Biden presidency. And, the Biden agenda has been much heralded, after 4 years of confusion and chaos and craziness, looking through the looking glass, with the Trump era. A breath of fresh air for, I guess, all involved, not just here in this country, most of us anyway, but for our foreign friends as well. Looking forward to what the future will hold with a Biden presidency, some stability, so on and so forth. But the Biden agenda, and Joe Biden in particular, seem to be a tempest in a teapot these days. And the question is this temporary, or is there a serious problem? Let's start with, one of the main proponents of the agenda, of course, the coronavirus, the pandemic. Biden, of course, had promised and hoped that at least 70% of Americans would be vaccinated, close to that, but not yet. We have a variant here. And then we have a lot of Americans that are still not vaccinated, millions, as a matter of fact. And that's wreaking all sorts of havoc on trying to get this under control. Then we have, of course, the Afghanistan pullout. Some would say it was chaotic. Some would say it was embarrassing. Some senators are saying that we surrendered, so on and so forth. You go on down the list with that squabbling, and this is bipartisan. So there are hearings that are going on right now in the Senate, as well as in the House, with the Biden's top military leaders. And there seems to be contradictions, people pointing fingers, or at least on one end, and Biden denying that he had heard anything about, maintaining troops, at least from anywhere from 25 to 3,500 in the country. So that's another thing. Then we have this huge thing called the infrastructure bill, and thereabouts. So the Democrats can't seem to maintain any control over this bill because there's bickering and squabbling and fighting amongst themselves. The progressives and the moderates and so on and so forth. There's a concern about whether or not this bill will pass. Of course, we have the situation with the debt, and then also immigration, and front and center right now, the issue of the Haitians. And you've seen the video of at least 10 to 15,000 Haitians under some viaduct or bypass in Del Rio, Texas. And of course, those horrible pictures of Border Patrol agents on horseback, looking like they have whips. They say they were reins, trying to corral some Haitians in. And that's been a big thing about this. Of course, the Republicans are on the sidelines probably looking at this and laughing. But more importantly than that, where are we with the American public on all of this? Who do we believe? Who's in control? Who's in charge? Are our best interests being held up by our lawmakers? And I'm scratching my head about all this. But when I scratch my head too much, I have to bring in the guru from Washington, Eric Ham, and he joins us right now. Of course, he's a best-selling author and a political analyst and extraordinaire. I mean, I like Eric because he gives me a different perspective than anybody else. This is absolutely crazy. We've got this big hero here, and I guess we'll have to eat this one bite at a time. Let's start with the Biden agenda. We got a situation here where a deadline's coming up, and we just don't know whether or not we're going to get a bill. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you're right. We're seeing where this is looking like not only is the Biden agenda on the line right now, but the Democrats' ability to govern also. And Julian, what's interesting about this is you've only got two Democrats that are really holding this up. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Kristen Sinema of Arizona. Now, and the question, of course, becomes, what is it that they want? What is it that we can do or Democrats can do to get them to get on board? We know that they have been pressed to actually provide a number that they can live with the budget reconciliation. That's the $3.5 trillion social infrastructure plan. Provides lower prescription drug prices, child care, community college, things like that, access to broadband in rural communities. And this plan is actually overwhelmingly popular with all Americans, not just Democrats, not just independents, but all Americans. Here's what's going on, and this is what you're not going to hear members of Congress talk about. Both of these members are bought and paid for by particular lobbyists. And so now they are basically doing their bidding on this particular legislation. And let me go into the weeds a little bit so the people that are watching will understand. You've got Joe Manchin, who represents a state, a coal state. Coal meaning coal for fuel, for energy. Mm-hmm. And so he gets a lot of money from them, from the coal industry. Now, the coal industry is a dying industry, but what impact this legislation has on coal is it will basically expedite its death. Because in this $3.5 trillion package, it actually calls for lowering of carbon emissions, and it actually moves faster to actually get those carbon emissions to zero. And in addition to that, what it does is it provides tax credits to companies that actually lower their carbon emissions. So that's something that the coal industry doesn't want, because coal is, as we know, it's a fossil fuel, and it's a dirty fuel, which means it burns dirty. So Joe Manchin doesn't want to see this legislation pass, because it basically puts coal and the industry in the death grip. Now let's look at Senator Kyrsten Sinema. Now Kyrsten Sinema is an interesting case study, because this is someone who served in the state legislature, became a congresswoman, and became a senator. But here's what people may not know. Kyrsten Sinema actually was a member of the Green Party when she started out in politics. That means she was to the far, far left. So in fact, just 5 years ago, this is a woman who would have been with the Progressive Caucus, but now she has moved so far that even Republicans don't know where this woman stands. This is a woman who just 4 years ago was pushing for an increase in the minimum wage. This is someone who stood on the floor with John Lewis pushing for voting rights legislation to pass. And now here she is standing, trying to choke the life out of this $3.5 trillion package. Why is that? The reason is because over the last 5 years, she's received millions from Big Pharma, from the pharmaceutical industry. In this legislation, the bill would give the federal government the ability to negotiate drug prices. It would give Medicare the ability to negotiate drug prices down. Right now, the United States pays more than 2 times more for drugs than any other nation in the world. Let that sink in for a minute. We're basically paying more than double for drug prices than anyone else in the world. So when you hear about people going in Europe and New York, when you hear about people going over to Canada to get their drugs, the reason why they can go to Canada and get their drugs and get them at a cheaper price is because Canada has enormous buying power. They basically go to Big Pharma and say, this is what we're going to pay because we control the market for these drugs. Kyrsten Sinema is getting money from Big Pharma. And so in this legislation, it actually allows for Medicare to negotiate drug prices. And Kyrsten Sinema doesn't want that to happen because she's been bought and paid for by Big Pharma. Now, all of these members, Julian, to be fair, not just Sinema and Manchin, but all of them are bought and paid by somebody. But what we're seeing here is you have 2 major industries who have chosen these 2 members. They've bought and paid for them, and as a result, they are holding up the legislation. And they're dancing around it. But what they're not saying is, we don't want this bill to pass because it goes against the issues that we have been basically paid for to try to stop. Now, it's gotten so bad in Arizona that the Democratic Party of Arizona has already threatened to censor Kyrsten Sinema. So this is a woman who actually just got elected, and she's not up again until 2024. And already her approval rating is lower than the other Democratic Senator, Mark Kelly, and Joe Biden's in the state of Arizona. So you've got a woman right now who is not only unpopular with her own party in the state of Arizona, but she's unpopular with the state. So the question is, why are you doing something that is completely anathema to the party in your state, the constituents of your state, and yet you are still basically going over this cliff? You know, there are some who speculate that she may not even want to run again in 2024 and may take a job, a corporate job, or may just leave politics altogether and go work for someone like Fox News. But I think what we're seeing here, Julian, is someone who, in these two members, who are prepared to not only crash the president's agenda, but also very possibly crash the party in the lead up to the midterm elections next year.
Okay, so we're going to change the name of this show from On Point to The Breakdown with Eric. Because you broke this down, and I wish every ear in America could hear what you just said. I have said this all along, and Eric, you've heard me on other networks when I've talked about this, because it boils down to one thing and one thing only, and that is money. And if it ain't about the money, it's about the money. And here you have two people. And of course, you said others are, being bought and paid for too. We understand this. We got to talk more about this whole lobbyist thing. But you got two people here that are willing to sell their souls, this country, and the life of the planet for a temporary fix for money in their own pockets. This is absolutely unconscionable, and I wish Americans could wake up. There's this thing, in the documents of the founding fathers of our country that said, "We, the people," and the people have spoken, as you said. They are for more Medicare, more benefits, reduced pharma. They are for more gun control, all these kinds of things. But yet and still, you have lawmakers that are not adhering to the will of the... Forget about Donald Trump. Let's talk about folks that are in office that say that they are for us, and they're not. And I'd have to say, Eric Ham, and forgive me if I am wrong on this, but I would have to say the Biden agenda is an agenda, for me, from what I see, that is for the people. And we're still getting punished and castigated and thrown to the side because some folks want more money in their pockets. Am I wrong here?
No, you're not wrong at all. In fact, Senator Sinema right now is raising money off of her opposition to the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package. She's literally raising money off of that right now. But you've got to ask yourself, you are raising money. You're bringing money into your reelection coffers. But what is the point of bringing this money into your reelection coffers if already, and you're not up for reelection until 2024, but already Democrats are lining up to run against you. The Democratic Party of the state has already said they are going to sit, and they're going to censor her, not for her support or for her lack of support over this infrastructure plan. They're censoring her because she won't support voting rights, because she's one of a handful of Democratic senators who refuses to actually either eliminate or modify the filibuster so voting rights can pass, because she is saying that they should not do away with the filibuster, because she believes if in fact Republicans get control, then things will happen on their watch that Democrats cannot stop. So that's what she said. But what she and there are those who believe that Kyrsten Sinema is actually trying to be this John McCain-like politician from Arizona. The problem is John McCain had principles. Many people looking at Kyrsten Sinema, thought that she was this principled politician, But what we are seeing now is everything that she stood for from the time she was in the state legislature to the time she was in Congress has completely gone away. She voted against raising the minimum wage. She voted against voting rights. And now she's looking to derail this $3.5 trillion package. And so the question is, it's not just about what Big Pharma has done for her, but it's like, why are you basically, going against the needs of your very constituents? And this is happening and Arizona is now seen as a purple state, which means it's actually trending blue, not red. And
Right.
so clearly, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, it comes across as self-sabotage, which is why it's so inexplicable, what she's doing, but also what Joe Manchin is doing.
No, it's not inexplicable, Eric. They want money. They're greedy and they want money and they don't care about anything else. They don't give a gosh darn, I got to say it that way, about anything else but themselves. It's a shame. So here we go. But I want to go into this whole thing with the Haitians right now. But before we do that, I guess my question to you, in reading the tea leaves here, two things. One, do you think this infrastructure bill will pass in some form or fashion before some deadline? But then outside of that, and they're equally as important, I guess my question is, what can we as the people do about this? Is there anything that we can do? I mean, I guess the voting booth is one of it. That might be too late. What can the average American do to put pressure to make some sort of change here, Eric?
I really don't think there's anything that can be done because you've got look, many people, and I look at the Republican Party like this. The Republican Party has held America hostage, and we know that the Republican Party is prepared to shoot the hostage in order to acquire power for themselves. That is now what is happening on the left with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. These are two people who I believe are prepared to see the country burn because for whatever reason, they are doing the bidding of Big Pharma or something else. Because they have a bipartisan infrastructure package. Remember, there are two infrastructure bills. There is the infrastructure bill that focuses on just roads and bridges. That's a $1.2 trillion package, and that has bipartisan support. Remember, there were 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats in the Senate that came together and crafted that legislation. Well, now House progressive Democrats are saying, we will not move that bill unless this $3.5 trillion package moves along with it. And we've already heard from Joe Manchin saying, basically, we need to table the $3.5 trillion package. Now, here's what's also interesting about that, because Manchin always talks about how this is too much money, but the bill is paid for, meaning it doesn't do anything to increase the deficit. It is literally deficit neutral. How it's paid for is Democrats in the House, when they crafted the legislation in the Ways and Means Committee and also in the Senate Budget Committee, what they did was they literally rolled back Donald Trump's tax cuts. And if you remember, Donald Trump's tax cuts were $2 trillion. So they actually were able to get $2.9 trillion from tax cuts, as well as adding a surcharge on people making more than $5 million on companies and individuals. And then the other $600 billion comes from just basically inflation, just people making more money over time. Because remember, this is $3.5 trillion over 10 years. And so when you literally break that down, that literally comes down to $1,000 per American. And it is literally paid for with tax dollars.
Okay, and see, this is what you're not hearing on mainstream TV, on cable TV, or anything else. It breaks it down so people can understand like this. That's why I think this is so valuable. I guess my question then becomes, we can't do anything about this. What does it say for our democracy when you have the will of the people that's not being adhered to, and we're being lied to? And then again, you have a president who's trying to do the right thing, so I can see, and he's being castigated and being stepped upon because he doesn't have the power or whatever, or the will of his own party and lawmakers to get what really should be done for all Americans. This is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're looking at a very different time, particularly in the Senate. In fact, I think we are probably back to the early 1800s in terms of the Congress that we have now, where you've got people literally beating each other with canes on the floor of the House and Senate. You've got duels taking place because you have politicians now who are literally holding a gun to the head of the country. And we know that they are prepared to fire. And so House progressives typically are seen as the ones that are out there because, again, you've got the far right and then you've got the far left. It is typically the moderates, the centrists, that are seen as the ones that are sensible, moderate, because they're moderating their policies. Right now, you have progressives who have gone to Sinema and Manchin and said, if 3.5 trillion is too high for you, give us a number that you can work with. Just give us a number, and then we will modify the package to fit that number. Manchin and Sinema have not provided a number.
Yeah, this is a total disgrace. All right, look, let's move on here because we got a couple. I just wanted to just kind of put sandwich in Afghanistan for a minute. As you know, our military leaders under Biden have been grilled by the House, by the Senate over this Afghanistan withdrawal. And it seems to me there's a whole lot of grandstanding here, Eric, on the part of senators, primarily Republicans, but also Democrats too, trying to make statements without really asking questions. They want to get their voice out there, so they sound like either they're adhering to their constituents or putting out some sort of mantra or whatever that they want people to believe. How do we get past this? And how do we get the country to see the truth in Afghanistan in that with withdrawal? And I'm not siding with anybody, but as you see it, what do you see that may happen that may be positive that comes out of any of these hearings, and what we did or didn't do in Afghanistan during the withdrawal and in the past 20 years?
You've got to understand now, Julian, these hearings are not about trying to seek the truth. These hearings are not about trying to understand what happened so we can learn from it and then craft policy that will be better moving forward. That's not what hearings are about anymore, especially hearings on issues like this that are polarizing, that not only have an impact on the country, but the world. These hearings are all about grandstanding. These are opportunities for members to play gotcha politics with the administration and attack the administration. And that goes for both parties when you have parties in the opposition. That's what this is about right now. I mean, the biggest takeaway from these hearings yesterday was the fact that you had both the general and the civilian side, the commander and the civilian side, basically say, we advised the president to keep at least 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and the president did not go along with that. So what you saw, so the takeaway from that was the president basically did not listen to the generals. The president basically said, we are done with these forever wars. We are done. So there are those on one side who will say, great, you had a president for the first time willing to stand up to the generals, because what general isn't going to basically want forever war? That's what they're there for. They're generals. And then you have those on the other side who are going to say, these people need to resign and protest because the president didn't listen or take their advice. Where and the counter argument to that is, your job is to provide advice and counsel to the president. It doesn't mean that the president has to take your advice and counsel, especially when your advice and counsel is not, if it's not criminal, that he's not adhering to your advice and counsel. So I think it'll play either way depending on what side of the aisle you are on. But as far as the hearings that we have seen, I mean, even when you look at Dr. Fauci on the Hill testifying, you
Mhm.
have people like Rand Paul who are looking for sound bites, looking to attack. And that's what this has become now. It's basically performative politics at this point.
Right. Okay. Look, here's the thing, and not trying to take any sides on this, but hoping that at least with the Biden administration, and I try to remain neutral in all this as much as I can. But it seems to me, and I'm hoping that if we can survive this pandemic, if we can survive fossil fuels and carbon dioxide emissions and stuff, and we still have a planet in the next 20 or 30 years, that maybe perhaps Biden's presidency and his agenda will be looked upon more kindly, because I do believe there are a lot of things in there, and the people seem to agree with me, bipartisan wise, that what he's trying to do is a good thing. Anyway, let's move on here. 15,000 Haitians in Del Rio, Texas. Apparently, the prime minister of Haiti says more are going to be coming. Thousands are coming. They've been in Central America, some for years. They're coming here. They're being driven away, flown away on planes. You've seen Border Patrol agents with, they say they're not whips, but they're reins, and using questionable tactics. I don't want to draw the race card here necessarily. I don't know, because, under the Trump administration, you saw, folks that don't look like us in cages. They're people of color. What could be done differently in this? And I'm gonna make a little precursor on that by saying that Kamala Harris did go to Central America to try to meet with the leaders, or meeting with leaders there, to see how they can make situations in their country better. I think that's the best thing to do. But our lawmakers, once again, are focused on the border, when I don't necessarily think that that's the issue. I mean, it just puts a Band-Aid on the overall problem, Eric, in dealing with what's bringing these people here to begin with, either from Central America or from Haiti or any place else. What are your thoughts?
Well, the president he's got a situation on his hand, and just saying up front, he's going to have some problems during re-election, because this is going to come back, and this is going to bite him, because what people may not know is those 10,000 Haitians that were under that bridge in the Rio Grande area in Texas, they're all gone now. And in fact, most of them have already been deported back to Haiti. Mm-hmm. And so the president, in an effort to try to tamp down on what was going to be attacks from the right, moved expeditiously to move all of these people out of the country. And I think Black America, which has been instrumental to electing Democrats over the last 10, 15 years or so, they are going to they're going to hold the president to account for that. They're going to hold this administration to account for that. And we have already seen the special envoy to Haiti resign in protest, because the question is, you're sending these people back to basically a failed state. This is a state that has yet to recover from the earthquake of 2010, which is why many of these people left in the first place. So they haven't been to Haiti in over a decade. In addition to that, you have a country that is still heavily racked by the COVID-19 pandemic, and they just had their president assassinated. So you've got a country that basically has nobody at the wheel right now. And to send these people back into that environment where basically the country cannot even effectively absorb these thousands of people that you're sending back, it comes across as a humanitarian crisis. And the president's words, particularly that he spoke at the UN, they ring hollow, because you extradited over 100,000 Afghans. Some of them are now in the United States, but yet you moved them out of a failed state, and you brought them here. But then these people that are Black and Haitian, you're sending them back to a failed state. So the policy just doesn't make sense. Let's move these Afghans out of this precarious situation, bring them here. But then these Haitians, let's take them back to a place that probably is as bad, if not worse, than Afghanistan. So it doesn't make sense. And the president's going to have to pay for that. But as far as what's taking place on the border, you know, this is a bad situation, but it's not something that's unprecedented. We have
No,
seen over the last 20 years, you know, there have been ebbs and flows and people coming to the border. And that goes for a Republican or a Democratic administration. What we have not seen from any administration, though, over the last 20 years is working closely with our allies in the hemisphere to try to help build these countries up so people are staying home and not coming to the United States.
absolutely. And that's just my point on that. Of course, you're right about Biden. You know, I'm giving him credit about what he's doing with the infrastructure bills and trying to raise a level of living and lifestyle for Americans in this country, economy wise, and everything else. And then, of course, you've got this. Black folks, again, bearing the brunt of inhumanity in many ways, as far as I'm concerned. That's how I see it. Look, God, this border situation, people point back to saying, and we're going to end this in a minute here, to Ellis Island. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to come to this country. I mean, I fundamentally believe that, Eric. So I guess the question becomes, why aren't people who want to come here, who are being disenfranchised or being persecuted, whatever, in their countries, instead of coming to the borders en masse and crossing over the Rio Grande or whatever, why can't they go through the system the right way? And I'm asking that question for a reason, and I want you to answer it.
Well, here's the thing. When people actually come here, you can come, and the United States allows you to, you know, come to the United States and apply for asylum here. President Trump actually sought to change that, and he did change that with the passage of Title 42. And what that does is, because we're in a pandemic, that has now given the U.S. immigration policy the power now to say, no, you cannot come into the United States because we're in a pandemic. And so therefore, if you want to apply for asylum in the United States, you cannot do it on U.S. soil. You have to do it either from the country that you're in, or you can do it from Mexico. And this is actually something, again, this is another area where the Biden administration has been disingenuous, because they are using that title to say, this is why we're moving, that this is why we are now deporting these Haitians back to Haiti. But yet again, you're bringing tens of thousands of Afghans to the United States. So again, you know, they're hiding behind a Trump era policy to actually deport these Haitians, but yet giving safe haven and sanctuary to people who are fleeing a war-torn country, which is Afghanistan.
Right, but what I'm saying though is I hear that, and I hear it loud and clear. My issue is there an office or something at the border or whatever, like you had an Ellis Island here, you know?
No, there's not. Basically, what there is now, we're operating under the law, which is Title 42, which basically says you cannot apply for asylum in the United States. That was the case before Trump was able to get that legislation passed. You could come to the United States and then apply to the United States here in the country. Now you cannot come to you cannot apply for asylum in the United States. You have to either do it in the country that you're in. So those Haitians that have been deported back to Haiti, they have to now apply for asylum from Haiti to the United States, but they can't do it while they're in the United States.
Right.
The only way you're allowed to actually stay in the United States is if you're an unaccompanied minor, or if you're a family, which means you're an adult with small children.
All right. Okay. We're going to have to end it there. You know, to be continued, because I still have more questions for you on this and what the politicians are saying, what they're not saying. And of course, we the people are always in the middle of this, you know, this little quagmire here trying to figure it all out. Well, look, thank you, Eric, for you know, basically breaking it down for us as you always do. And we're going to see you hopefully shortly again, so we can continue this and other discussions, because it's an adventure daily in this country these days when it comes to politics and everything else. But
absolutely,
thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right, you bet, buddy. Thanks.
Okay. So what do we have here? We the people who want certain things done, and whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're black or white, we're human beings. We want the best for ourselves. But it seems like on one instance that the politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat, and it seems like two Democrats, the two amigos, as I call them, Sinema and Manchin, are not doing the right thing by us, just basically for the fact of their own greed. So it seems. Republicans have their own agenda. Of course, we understand that, you know, the ebbs and flows of politics. But here we are in the middle, and we're paying more money. Prices are going up. Drugs are at an all-time high. And I don't know. I don't know about you folks. And as I said, to me, this is not a Republican Democrat thing. This is just trying to get to a point where we can have life, a better life for ourselves. On the other hand, and I laud the Biden administration for, at least it seems like, trying to do the right thing. But on the other hand, with this immigration situation, what's going on with the Haitians is unconscionable, and the double standard. Where do we go with this? I've always talked about the fact that the power is of the vote, and in many instances it is. But right now we seem to be in a situation with the lawmakers at hand that there's nothing that we can do. Look, I don't know about you. I do believe, you know, wholeheartedly as a lay minister in the power of prayer, and I think we need to pray for our lawmakers on both sides, because I think that I know that a change has to come somehow, somewhere. That righteousness has to win out. That the world can survive. That, you know, we're not consumed by climate change and carbon emissions. That, you know, people can get drugs freely. That we can get better health care. We can do all sorts of things. We have better relationships, you know, with our foreign countries, our allies and adversaries as well. There's got to be some sort of end to this somewhere, where we can live in peace somewhat. Well, we haven't seen it since the beginning of recorded history that we know, but maybe we can get there. I hope that we can. Here on Point, this is what we try to do, to bring people together, try to find some common ground. I believe in that. I believe we are at each other's throats far too much, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. So my goal here is not to grandstand or have people that grandstand and present just one side. I'm trying to get both sides of the view so we all can be better informed. Let's keep on this road of trying to be on point. I know I will, and I hope you will continue to join us. This was kind of a long show here, but a very interesting one. And I hope that you'll join us next week. Take care.